Yep. Thanks everybody for coming. It's now 5:30, so I start proceedings. A bit unusual that Arnold's not here, but perhaps that's because we're having it in South Hedland. I wish to acknowledge the Garryella people on whose lands we are now meeting and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge the former mayor's presence in the audience and welcome the members of the public to this meeting, the first meeting of the year, which was deemed to happen on the 5th of February as a result of so many people being away during January, so that's why we've got two meetings in February. As you can see, we are holding this meeting in this stadium, so the proceedings will be slightly slower because of the equipment and some people who are brand new to putting together the minutes and the like. So item 3 is the attendance as per the list of attendees. Item 3.2 is attendees by telephone. There is in fact nil. Item 3.3, apologies, there is nil. Item 3.4, approved leave of absence, there is nil. Item 3.5, disclosure of interests. I declare that I have no financial interest in any item on tonight's agenda. And item 4 is application for leave of absence, there is nil. Before we move on, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping matters in relation to the rules to this stadium. Firstly, the toilets are located on the left at the end of the corridor. The second point is there's more toilets available downstairs. The third point is in case of emergencies, please remain calm and follow the instructions. Emergency exits are clearly marked and are located on my left or via the main exit downstairs. There is a muster point. The muster point is located at Kevin Scott Oval, which is to my right. Item 5 is a response to questions that were given at the AGM by Mr. Arnold Carter, and there is a 9-page answer to Mr. Carter's question. We now move into public time. This meeting is being recorded on audio tape and streamed live online as an additional record of the meeting and to assist the minute-taking purposes for which may be released upon request of a third party. If you do not give permission for recording your participation, please indicate this at this meeting. The public is reminded that in accordance with section 6.16 of the Town of Port Hedland's local laws on standing orders, nobody shall use a visual or vocal electronic device or instrument to record the proceedings of any meeting unless the person has been given permission by the chairperson to do so. Members of the public are reminded that in accordance with section 6.17 subsection 4 of the Town of Port Hedland local laws on standing orders, mobile phones must be switched off and not used during the meeting. In accordance with section 6.7 subsection 3 of the Town of Port Hedland local laws on standing orders, members of the public are required to complete a question form and place the completed form in the tray provided. If the presiding officer determines that the question or statement is out of order due to the use of offensive language or objectionable expressions or is defamatory, they will not be recorded or responded to. We open question time at 5:35. Do we have any questions? Yep.
Hello, Camilo Blanco, 18 Harwell Way, Wedgefield. Before I ask a question, I'll just want to say to all our new directors and CEO, welcome to Headland. Look, I really do hope you are treated a lot better than our last CEO and myself. And I hope that the people of Headland, start realising that, we need high-powered executive people to run the town and make sure that we implement a, ambitious 40 million capital works and maintenance program that, the council, before it was suspended, approved. But in saying that, I hope we can have some robust, conversations if there is any, issues without, getting personal or, going too crazy, which I hope we can do. That is to the public, that is, because I'm sure the administration will do that. So just in relation to item 11.1.2, the retrospective rates of certain port land, I was, fairly heavily involved in this for quite some time before the council was suspended. I would like to ask why there is no explanation as to why the total amount has been reduced to 45 million. The advice and discussions that I was having with industry and the administration had that amount at 80 million. So do you have any reason why, there's a $35 million reduction in the total amount compared to what my understanding is of it?
And is this have you got this in writing for us? The questions?
Yes. Okay.
That's been handed in?
No.
Okay, if you could hand it in, or if you wish to read out the three questions. And
this is obviously you're going to make a decision on this tonight.
Yeah.
So it's quite relevant, I would say, to maybe get an answer, considering that I would have thought that when you were appointed as commissioner, that you would have understood the total amount was around that figure.
Yep. Ask your questions. The three questions.
Okay. Number two, there is no explanation as to why the attached valuations are considerably lower in 14-15, 15-16. This is not in line with the real position Headland was at the time, and does not reflect the information that I have and the intent of the back rate legislation. And number three, I'd like to say that the council of the time, and also any council that may be elected in the future, would not agree to having a significant reduction to the back rates that are proposed here for industry. So I'd like you to consider that very carefully for tonight's for the decision you're making tonight.
Okay.
That's it. I'll give you a copy when I've got my statement on.
Just ask our accountant to speak to some of those questions.
Okay, I'll hold it down. Thank you, through the chair. The number that you referred to in relation to the 80 million was based on indicative valuations. They weren't final. And as you know, those valuations are provided by the Valuer General. So, the second element is that that was based on 5 years, but the 5-year horizon that applies has changed. So we're now currently in FY20. We've already backgraded we applied the rates for FY19, so we're now in a situation where we can only legally, under the legislation, backrate 4 years, because it's 5 years from your current financial year. So the valuations, had not been settled at that time, and why they've moved year on year is, a question for for the Valuer General.
I'm happy to take the rest of that on notice, the balance of those questions. The explanation for my decisions will be made public at this meeting, and no doubt people will either agree or disagree with that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Right. My name's Dion Cawthray from 13 Barrow Place in South Hedland. I've got 3 questions on the same issue, but in a different line of questioning, more on the detail that you have on the schedule that you have in your agenda. Question 1 is, why is there no increase in valuation between 16-17 and 17-18? Every other year they seem to have gone up except for that. And did residential and commercial rates go up in that same period of time?
You just asked the 3 questions.
Maybe one or more. Question 2 is, Nelson Point stockpile valuation in the same schedule seems to be rapidly downward trending while others have quadrupled for the same period. That's the second bottom row of your schedule on page 39. And question 3 is, can you detail where at any other time rates review has uncovered an error of this magnitude or any magnitude on residential or commercial applied valuations resulting in a 75% discount as a rectification measure?
Thank you, through the chair. The similar response in relation to the valuations, we are dependent on the Valuer General to provide those. Their methodology and information that they use is unknown to us. We can pass your questions on to them and see what response we get for that too. I'll have to look into the residential and commercial rates for the previous period, for those periods, because I wasn't actually here and I don't have that information with me. In relation to question 3, I believe this is pretty much, there's no precedent in relation to pretty much more along the lines of the quantum. We do obviously do back rating on spot changes, but there's no, when we did all our research and gathered all our legal information, there's very little precedent to follow or to look at, or information available to see what's been done in the past.
Okay. In response to your answer just then, we all know that councils have never been very lenient on residential ratepayers when they've found errors, and I find that this method, this rectification of 75% discount on back rates offered now is pretty heavy. And I think that, it really should be applied in the same way you would do for a residential ratepayer, if you're going to go down that road.
Yes, thank you for that. I don't know that it's the last question as a result of an error. It was the Act allows for back rating to occur. It's not an error. It's, the Act says you can do that. It's not an error.
That's a bit of an interpretation of it all.
No, it's not an error.
Okay.
But we'll answer the rest of that question on notice, so that you get a full explanation. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Scott Lowe, 8 Anderson Street, Port Hedland. I'd also like to add my welcome to the new CEO, and to add for the Commissioner that Mr Carter is unfortunately detained in Perth. Otherwise, I have no doubt you'd be here at the meeting tonight.
Right.
My question is, item 11.3.2 of tonight's agenda references a proposed workforce accommodation position statement that has a basis in a social impact assessments and social impact management plans. Approximately 2 years ago, I stood in council chamber broadly be described as an affront to the democratic process took place that saw the council approve the 20-year extension of the Port Haven facility. Central in that proposal was that an SIA and SIMPs with measurable, reportable KPIs would be developed by the proponent and reported upon annually. Has that process been undertaken? Are those KPIs available to the community? And is the council happy that the community is receiving a sufficient benefit beyond the ratings yield gained from that facility?
In my understanding, we are definitely getting reports on the suitability and performance of that village. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Yeah. But we would, to get accurate, we'll take that on notice.
Sure.
And give you an accurate figure as to what you're asking. So, so is that all you're asking for?
Yeah, I can take that one on notice. I'll give this to your
Yeah,
question
that'd be
taker,
great.
but I'll hold on to it because I've got a statement. So.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Yeah.
Good evening, my name is Dean Davis of 2 Lovell Way. The community that I represent has seen an oversight and it's been identified with the shared health issue between local and state government with NSPs still open during open times of an NSP, setting the NSP up for failure. Will local government please close all NSPs operating within a 400 metre walking distance from the NSEP when it is open?
Have you have other questions?
Sorry?
Do you have other questions? Yep.
Yeah. Now that we have an NSP, will the government stop advertising, educating to people who inject drugs that parks with toilets in them are suitable locations for high-risk activities?
Okay. Yep.
The third one is, why has the local government failed in the share health space with a BDR rollout, being the Banned Drinkers Register, which was approved well over, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and was set to be rolled out before the end of 2018.
Yeah. The Banned Drinkers Register, as I understand it, just in the last question, it's still yet to be rolled out.
Mm-hmm.
The council is supportive of that rollout,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping it happens sooner rather than later. But that'll be up to the government and that industry, the timing of that. But
So when does a commitment become a lie?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, it's been, over 2 years now? This has been approved. It's been well over 12 months that the first rollout date has gone by.
I don't
The state government refuses to be transparent over it, and I'm asking you why you failed.
Well, no one here has failed because it's not our project.
Health is a shared responsibility between local and state government.
Yeah, I'm answering the question. The question is in relation to the Banned Drinkers Register.
Mm-hmm.
The Banned Drinkers Register is the province of the state government and the industry, and we are supportive of that. When they introduce it, we will be supportive of it.
Are you a
the other two-
stakeholder in the town of Port Hedland?
Yeah.
Okay.
We all are.
Is the local government shared responsibility in health?
Well, I'm on various committees that do say that, yeah.
Then you failed
Oh, well,
in
that's your
rolling
view.
out the
That's your
BDR
view.
as the state government.
That's your view. If you don't want to listen to the answer, then that's fine.
No, I'm asking you to not be responsible and
hang
not
on,
shirk.
don't yell. The other two questions are in relation to the newly established needle exchange program at the hospital. The questions you ask, we will answer on notice after we get some information from the from the service itself.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, question time is closed at 5:50. Public statements time. There were several people indicated they were going to make a public statement, so yeah.
Do I need to announce myself again?
If you could,
Yep,
for the
okay.
purpose
Scott
of
Lowe,
the-
8 Anderson Street, Port Hedland.
Yep.
Tonight's agenda item 11.1.2 proposes that the ratepayers of Port Hedland give a tax break in the order of $25 million to two of this country's largest and most profitable companies. Despite the officer's commentary on hardships upon small companies, the main beneficiaries of a combined 96% of the overall proposed benefit of this proposal are BHP and FMG. So let's call this what it is, a $17 million and $7 million tax gift to BHP and FMG respectively. I wish to quote from the officer's recommendation. It states, "There is a reputational and legal risk associated with this item, as other ratepayers who have paid their rates in full may feel aggrieved that relevant lessees are not paying the full retrospective rates. However, the Local Government Act expressly permits the waiving of rates. As this item allows that waiver to be granted in accordance with that legislative power, no cause for action by another ratepayer against the town alleging financial loss could be maintained. As mentioned, the imposition of the full rates and retrospective rates will allow the town to charge lower rates and or provide greater services in the future. It follows, and this is the part I take umbrance with, it follows that other ratepayers will have suffered no loss because of the imposition of these rates." I wish the Commissioner to actively consider how obtuse that statement is. That other ratepayers will have suffered no loss is a total fallacy. Money is fungible. Revenue required that is not raised in this hand is raised in this hand. So we will have already suffered loss through having paid higher rates than was necessary in the past to meet the overall rating yield, and or our future levied rates could actually be lower by the amount equal to the sum that it is proposed that we now let the big end off. So we have, or we will suffer future loss by not collecting these rates. How is that not obvious? I'll give you two tangible examples where these rates being levied, where these rates being levied to their fullest could avoid impacts elsewhere. One, the primary consideration given by the then Mayor in his advocacy in favour of the extension of the Port Haven lease, despite it being against the will of the community, as mentioned in my questioner's question time, was that the town was reliant on the rates yield of that facility. And yet here we are proposing to voluntarily give up the equivalent of over 20 years' worth of rate yield from it. Two, I've attended several Rating Strategy Council meetings where I've argued against the arbitrary imposition of a minimum rating level. My point was and remains that it is an inherently unfair mechanism that takes a progressive wealth tax and makes it regressive. Anyone who pays the prescribed minimum rate rather than a lower amount that a rate in the dollar calculation would impose ends up paying a higher marginal rate of tax than other ratepayers. It makes a tax where lower value property owners end up in effect subsidising higher value property owners. Town of Port Hedland have never been able to provide a strong argument as to why the minimum rate setting is required, other than it helps them reach the required yield. Again, here we are proposing to forego a pot of funding that could alternatively be used to reduce the level of minimum rates and inject some fairness back into that equation. So I would argue, raise the money. If genuine hardship exists in the payment in a single year period, then offer payment terms to those companies. Hold that money initially in reserve, quarantine it from future use until any statute of limitations are met if your primary concern is of challenge against the state's valuations. But do not offer a gift to the shareholders of those two companies that will be taken from the pockets of this community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yep.
Camelo Blanco, 18 Harwell Way. I find it amusing that, there's references to council decisions as to the previous mayor is solely responsible for a council decision. I wish that was the case, that I would have the power to make a decision without the council. A lot more things would have got done. But before I start, again, this relates to obviously 11.1.2, the retrospective rating. And before I start, I'd like to say that I'm not being critical of anyone. In this item, this has been a long and hard road with a lot of interference behind the scenes from industry and the state government. I would like to acknowledge the staff member who actually discovered and proved that we could rate industry land. And Hedland owes her a great debt of gratitude now and for many years to come. And I haven't heard her being mentioned previously in any of the items, but Leanne Olber is, was one of our staff members that made this happen. And, over the past 30 or 40 years, we've been told by government, by administrations and whoever else that we could not rate industry land, when in actual fact we can. So if we had been receiving that rate money, obviously our town would have developed far better than it has done over the past few years. So I'd just like to outline what I think about this report, and I do think it's a little bit biased. Effectively, we have 5 dot points, on such a significant decision, all in favour of industry, not having to pay the full amount due. Whatever I think about this is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that I think the report should be, a level sort of report that sees both sides, industry side and also the people, the ratepayers of the town. We've done a significant amount of work over the past 3 years to get to this point. Many meetings, considerable legal opinion, countless requests and advice from the Department of Local Government, the Minister's Office, that, clearly went unanswered. The report in the agenda should be neutral. It should outline the facts. That would be in the best interest of the Hedland people. That should be our first goal. Then we should propose industry's reasons behind why they shouldn't have to pay, whether it be hardship, cash flow, whatever it is. But the report fails to provide answers. The information I've received from the administration and negotiations I was having with industry for the amount of back rates in order of $80 million based on the original valuations and then additional re-evaluation of the valuations because industry objected to the original valuations. This report has no explanation as to why the amount has been effectively halved. There's been no justification relating to why the decision was made to settle on the 25% of the total amount. There's no reasonings behind the significant differences in the valuations on the 14-15 financial year compared to the 18-19 financial year. And everybody knows the 14-15 valuations in Hedland were 60 to 90% higher, not 75% lower than today's market value. The report states significant funding has been received from industry but doesn't outline the amounts and the comparisons to rates that should have been paid. The report doesn't explain why only 4 years back rates have been charged. of the allowable 5 years as per section 6392B of the Local Government Act. And that effectively further reduces the total amount by 11 or 12 million. That's based on your figures. We've lost a full year's back race because we haven't issued the back rate notices when we were required to. Now, I have specifically requested the administration, apply those back rate notices on multiple occasions, in writing and verbally. So I don't see any, legal advice, in the agenda that refers back to that, or why we aren't allowed to charge the full 5-year back rates. It's just written in the agenda, a 1.5-page agenda item on effectively $34 million reduction. Some of these industries have enjoyed a 25 to 40 years of no rates. And we're allowed to claim the 5-year back rates. So for the report to say 25% of the last 4 years would reduce any impact economically does not equal fair and equitable outcome to the majority of ratepayers in Port Hedland. And all my conversations with administrations, councils and people in Hedland talk about fair and equitable rating structure. Discounting your calculated rate charge of 34 million, and like I said, my information relates to 70 million. That would be a 70 million reduction from industry rates, and I'm sure that they can afford to pay. And outlining that that discount on 1.5 pages without any financial analysis, no references to the adjustments made to the long-term financial plan, no long-term analysis of the financial advantages or disadvantages created to the majority of the residential and small business ratepayers due to the decision. No analysis into increased operational and maintenance costs on the ratepayers due to the spend proposed on this, where we're proposing to spend the 11 million. No engagement with small business, with the small business district or residents to seek a general full community consensus on whether this is fair and equitable, in their opinion. Now, the state government and the Premier, Mark McGowan, did not entertain a royalty reduction from BHP of 75% when the 300 million royalty payment was discovered because of a miscalculation in the payments. So I think the same issue applies here. So also in 2018, the state government commissioned the John Langdon report outlining the failings of this local government. Nothing to do with you guys, but it was, outlining the failings of this local government, actually, in the build of this stadium. The recommendations to the town of Port Hedland required us to do better in our financial accountability and responsibility. Economic and financial risk management, greater understanding on the detrimental exposure in our budgeting system, because of bad financial decisions, and obviously asset investments and a greater need for planning prioritisation. Again, none of these recommendations in the Langdon report are outlined in this report. So again, in my opinion, it's critically important that all information and advice be issued in a comprehensive report so local governments across the state, not just Hedland, but across the state, can see what we've done and the benefit of this work that ensures a fair and equitable rating system applied across towns, and especially mining towns like Hedland, that have struggled to maintain and replace ageing assets over many years. The way this agenda item is presented does not support the people of the town. It supports industry. That's That's the way I read it. And you should be deferring the item until such time as all the information is presented in an open and transparent manner. And obviously the full back rates notice should be issued without delay. And, you know, that is a requirement of the Act. And also the full amounts should be listed in our financials with detailed explanations and reasonings behind any advantages or disadvantages. And that is also actually a legislated reporting requirement of the Local Government Act. So it is in the best interests of local governments across WA to show the advantages and failings so they can benefit from the work that we've done in this area. And I don't think that it's a failing on our part, because I think we were spearheading, you know, a great achievement here. So, you know, that is the price we pay for being the leaders in this area. So, anyway, thanks for your time.
Thanks. Is there any other statements? Not being any, I close public statement time at 6:06. Item 6.3, petitions. There is none. Questions from members without notice. There is nil. Item 8 is just a summary of some meetings I've had, and I also wish to welcome our new CEO, Carl Askew, for his first meeting of the Port Hedland Council. Item 9, I declare that I've given due consideration to all matters contained in this agenda. Item 10, I confirm that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on Thursday the 19th of December are true and correct record. Okay, the first item, item 11.1.1. This item is a review of the purchasing and regional preference policy. This new policy ensures that the town is able to better apply a regional preference to suppliers located within the town's boundaries and, to a lesser extent, neighbouring councils. The changes to the ethics statement provides guidelines for all sectors of the community when conducting business with the town. The ethics standards was last reviewed in November 2015, but was never presented to council. Some minor inconsistencies were identified during the review, and they were corrected. The two areas which are highlighted as being treated differently are firstly stationery and legal services. The new way these services are dealt with are on a 3-year basis and a cumulative amount paid for the services are not to exceed $150,000. If they do, a tender is then used. The next change is in relation to the Aboriginal enterprise and a provision. Previous council limited contracts to $150,000. The state legislature sets the limit at $250,000. That is now the new limit for council. I now have 2 levels of regional pricing where Hedland businesses get the full discount and surrounding councils receive 50% of the Hedland business policy preference. I support the recommendation on page 20 of this report. The next item is the retrospective rating of certain port and associated lands. This particular item was very difficult and complex and occupied my thoughts for some time, but in the end I consider a reduction of 75% of the total or 25% of the back rates to be paid the correct resolution to this matter. The complexity arises when you consider that back rates are to be levied on companies who have contributed far more in the period covered by the back rates, and more than what is being written off, in fact. The major contributor paid in excess of $40 million over this same period of time. I am in receipt of letters of support after negotiations and talking to from 2 of the 3 major companies, and for the position that I'm setting out now. I received a letter from the 3rd, not supporting it. Of course, they think those companies think they should pay nothing. I have since received a call from the 3rd, a phone call from the 3rd major company, a slightly less aggressive content than the letter we received. And that letter was received only yesterday. The fact is the council is now in a far better position now than prior to the imposition of the new rates on the land subject to this item. I consider that if council was seen to be greedy, it may prompt a response from the Minister that would impact on our current and future income, and would be a disaster for this council if that happened. I do agree that the primary purpose of rates is to run the day-to-day operation of council, and that council survived over the period we are talking about. But part also is to fund infrastructure and improve facilities within the town. Only one of the companies was involved in that endeavour. I'm mindful that these companies have finalised their accounts and reported to the stock market, and this amount will cause some difficulty in their accounting system. I've had discussions with the department and 2 of the major companies. The 3rd, I have only received a letter from yesterday, as I indicated, and a phone call from them today. I've not spoken to the Minister in relation to this matter, as I thought it was inappropriate. It is correct that my role is to consider the impact on ratepayers of all my decisions, and I take that responsibility very seriously. It is worth noting that 80% of all rates is paid by these companies. The amount paid to council will be paid into a separate account and only be spent on infrastructure already announced by council. I do understand the concerns expressed in questions and in the submissions today, and the comments, and I thank you for those contributions. They add a lot to our openness and accountable part of council. But in this particular case, weighing up all the evidence and everything I had to consider, and I've got to say it was not an easy decision. It was a very, very difficult decision to come to. And I think on balance, I've come to the correct decision. So that's the end of that particular item, apart from the questions that we will answer as we've said we would. Okay. I now move on to item 11. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I support the recommendation on page 20 of this report. Item 11.1.3, a proposed rescinding of the policy vandalism reward for conviction. This item is to be rescinded, the vandalism reward for conviction policy. The policy is to be removed. Remove this item from the policies. The reason is that the rewards were never claimed, and it was never effective. The new Graffiti Legislation Act 2016 makes our policy obsolete and redundant. The new Act reflects Council's current practice, so I support the recommendation on page 29 of the report. Council's decision, on item 11.1.4, which is the status of Council's decision update. This report shows the progress of Council decisions and the various stages of completion to the desired results. The vast majority of outstanding issues are recent decisions. The few older ones are being held up by external bodies or groups waiting for replies from Council correspondence. I think the report shows the efficiency of our staff. I support the recommendations on page 32 of the report. Item 11.1.5, Port Hedland Yacht Club self-supporting loan. This item is in relation to the Port Hedland Yacht Club and its financial position. The construction of the marina over the next 18 months will have a negative impact on the income of this club. It is fantastic that the club has now embraced the development and will play a positive role in the delivery of the project. The net impact is a request to stop payments on the loans for the next 6 months and to stop the interest that would accrue for that period of time. I do thank the club for supplying their financial records so that this matter can proceed. I support recommendation on page 34 of the report as it supports the survival of this community club. I do urge people who are listening to continue to use the club even during construction. It's important for the survival of this particular club. Item 11.2.1, which is the flying of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags. This item is rescinded as the rules are now set out in the Prime Minister and Cabinet's national flag protocols. It is interesting to me that there is actually a process by which you can correctly put flags up and down a pole. The first is that the Australian flag must go up first, then the Aboriginal flag, and then the Torres Strait Islander flag, and the last one to go up is the Shire flag. And of course, when you're taking them down, the protocol says that the Shire flag should come down first, and of course through with the Australian flag being the last to be removed. It's just interesting that we have protocols that settle that out. I support the recommendation on page 37 of this report. Item 11.2.2, review of policy, the cultural affirmation. The review of this of policy, cultural affirmation, this policy review has now been superseded by our Reconciliation Action Plan. The new emphasis is supported by Indigenous people in our area and your council. I am hopeful that meaningful progress can be made with the new RAP or Reconciliation Action Plan. I'm hoping that the actions deliver some improvement, not only aesthetically but actual improvements to Indigenous people's capacity to run businesses and the like. I support the recommendation on page 41 of our agenda. Item 11.3.1, trading in public places. This new policy is accumulation of the early days attempt to restrict the impact and restrict where the vans can operate, plus a regularised fees. In 2012, a review took place and improved controls and locations permits. In 2018, the policy was again reviewed, which has seen the vans regularly used in events and have become part of the community fabric at events and the like. This new policy should improve the the process in the following areas. The first, more logical order for the reading of the actual rules. 2, a new annual application. This application will be processed by an authorised officer rather than the CEO. All food premises have to be registered under the Food Regulations 2009. Temporary food vendors have been added. Special requirements for food vendors not registered within council to pay fees and apply with the same regulations. The ability to waive fees when dealing with events, particularly for registered charities, not-for-profit organisations, community groups and community events and free community events. The removal of fees associated with trade at different locations are already registered in town. The removal of 2 locations and the replacement of 2 new locations. The increase in town support for local businesses and the possible increase in public trading opportunities by reducing red tape and fees is hoped to be the result. I support the recommendation on page 45 of this report. Item 11.3.2, which is the one you spoke about earlier with questions. This item has set out what we as council consider to be the best way forward with certainty to be created as the type of structures for each different type of accommodation to house these employees. There are 5 different classes of employees that will be summarised as follows. The first is the short-term construction workforce for major projects. Secondly, construction workforce for general projects and subcontractors. Third, short-term periodic maintenance shutdown workforce for major projects. 4, long-term operational workforce. And 5, driver accommodation at approved truck stops. These new rules do apply to new applications and will require greater connection to the town and services. They should have an outward look rather than the current system of an inward look. The changes for the more permanent accommodation is to be improved greatly. I support the recommendation on page 49 of the report. To item 11.4, there is nil. 11.12, report of committees, nil. 13, motions for which previous notice has been given is nil. New business of an urgent nature is nil. Item 15 is an item that requires us to close the meeting, so I thank those